What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Behind the Counter 2.0, BTC 2.0. I'm your host, Rich. What's going on, everybody? How are you? I'm doing good. We may have a couple of shirt changes, not on camera, but I may be recording this over the span of a couple of days. Listen, this is coming out every Saturday morning, just like the cartoon I am, and I hope you enjoy it. You guys have been nothing but sweet with the feedback you've given me. I really appreciate it. It makes my job a lot easier. But listen, I get to talk about comics to you guys once a week, or talk at you guys at least once a week about comics. Sometimes I pepper it in on Matt Men Podcast or Matt Men the Podcast. But this is the platform and the forum to chat comic books and talk comic books with you guys. Thanks for the feedback on the last couple of episodes. The relaunch has been pretty cool so far. We're going to have to try to signal boost this as much as possible. So smash that like button, drop kick that like button, like that like button, kiss that like button. Do what you got to do. Just make this show as popular as effing possible. All right. This week we got a great guest. We got Rich Douek, who writes Sea of Sorrows for IDW, and we're going to be talking about some horror comics as well. Et voila! As promised, an outfit change. Oh, what's this? An Expanse shirt? Wow, did you guys check out that ending? Pretty nuts, man. It looks like they're steering off course from the books just a little bit now that so-and-so is out of the picture. I mean, you know, the guy did what he did. They got rid of him from the show, and they're going to move on. I hope Expanse Season 6 rocks. Season 5 was pretty fantastic. I'm going to take a minute here to plug one of my buddies, Ethan Young, comic book artist, illustrator, all around super cool dude. You can find him on Twitter at pop_myth and youngillustrations.com/commissions. He's opened up his commissions recently, and the dude does such fantastic work. Go check his stuff out. Request a commission while they're open. Ethan's stuff has come such a long way in the last few years. I met him a few years ago, and he was incredible then, and he's just getting better and better. So get your money's worth. He's the guy to go to right now for a commission. And on with my picks of the week. So this week, loaded week for comics, obviously. It usually is, and again, I can't complain about that. X-Force. Ben Percy is killing it. X-Force 17 came out this week. It's furthering this really insane side of what's happening on Krakoa. So X-Force is basically like the team of X-Men who do what they need to do to get the job done. So the book features Wolverine, Beast, Quentin Quire, who's one of my favorites, and this issue is basically all about the many deaths of Quentin Quire. For those of you that don't know, the X-Men and the mutants can get resurrected if they're on the island of Krakoa. There's a whole process to bring them back from the dead. So essentially the mutants are immortal in the Marvel Universe at this point. Dark Detective, the Future State stuff just keeps coming in. Big fan of the Dark Detective story. It was a nice thick issue too, and I think the backup was a grifter story also. Robin Eternal was my Future State pick of the week, though. What an issue. 2-issue series. Very, very, very cool stuff. I hope this carries over into whatever DC does after Future State's over. Black Hammer Vision's #1 this week. New Black Hammer stuff is always good. I cannot emphasize enough how much I like Patton Oswalt writing comics. And he's got 2 books on the shelf. This being Black Hammer Vision's #1, new anthology series, and the MODOK book from Marvel, which I find, chef's kiss, superb. My pick of the week is Radiant Black #1 from Image Comics. Oh boy, what a book. I couldn't put it down. I really enjoyed it. Very, very strong first issue. And not only that, but, you know, Kyle Higgins really delivered on that letters page. He wrote like this beautiful little, I wouldn't call it an essay, but like kind of like an intro to the book, and, you know, just kind of like the process of getting to where he is and the character also. So it's very much like, I think like a real life vision of what certain people could go through if you're a creative and you kind of have to go back home maybe, and you're down on your luck, and you don't want to say that it's over, but you're kind of afraid that you never started. Very Very good book. Solid number one. Definitely my pick of the week. Written by Kyle Higgins and art done by Marcelo Costa. I can't wait to see where this goes. It's kind of like a coming of age, but a little older than coming of age story, with the protagonist being in their mid-30s. Very cool book. Can't recommend it enough. You guys ready for more mutants? I am. If you caught Wanda Vision last week, you kind of got thrown for a loop. I know I was. I predicted that it was going to be Fassbender showing up at the door as Magneto, but I was wrong. Pleasantly surprised it was Pietro. I do this like every episode. Pietro, Wanda's brother, shows up, but it was the actor from the X-Men franchise. I think the forbidden door of mutants mixing with the Marvel Universe has now been open. I can't wait to see what this week's episode brings. I don't know if they're going to go more forward with the mutant stuff, or that was just a teaser for the upcoming season finale where you see some claws or maybe like a Cerebro or something cool like that, right? So this week our guest is Rich Douek, writer of Sea of Sorrows, a great horror comic from IDW. And I am a big fan of horror comics. I've been a fan of horror comics since I was younger, since I started reading comics. He had great books like Wasteland, Flinch, which came out from Vertigo. Wasteland's like a bit older, and like it was gnarly. I remember that. EC books, horror comics have always had a place on the shelf. I really don't think publishers stopped making them. Maybe you haven't really heard of them. Maybe they've been kind of like under the wire, but they've been around. Notably, in the last couple of years, you had Joe Hill doing an entire imprint with DC called Hill House, where creators basically did miniseries horror comics, which are all pretty fantastic. I really enjoyed all of them. And Gideon Falls, arguably one of the best horror comics to come out in the last few years. They just wrapped up a couple of months ago, and it was fantastic. Sea of Sorrows is from IDW, and here we have Rich Douek, writer, talking about his book. Check it out. What's up, guys? Joining us today is Rich Douek, writer of Sea of Sorrows from IDW. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. So when I got in touch with you a few weeks ago for doing this, and I really appreciate you doing this, you told me that you are also from Flushing.
Yeah. I grew up right off of Parsons Boulevard in Flushing, kind of close to border Whitestone. But I was like a few blocks away from Main Street and Northern Boulevard, like that whole area. So it's like that part of Flushing, kind of like one stop away from Shea Stadium.
Pretty awesome. Like I also grew up in Flushing and I live in Flushing, but I'm not gonna give people my address.
No, don't blame you.
Yeah, Flushing's awesome though. Like I always had fun, like growing up. Like I always found that Main Street was like super cool because of like, you had a bunch of arcades there at one point. Everything was kind of walking distance, and you can get to Shea Stadium and Citi Field.
Yeah,
and on a quick walk.
There were a couple of great comic stores. There was Mike's Comic Hut.
Oh yeah.
But I used to go there all the time. Then they closed after a while. But then there was one called Chameleon Comics that was right in the Main Street area that I would go to. That was
Chameleon. Sorry to cut you off. As we're getting like a little cross signal, but Chameleon was awesome. My dad used to have a store in the Busy Bee Mall, and they were in the basement originally.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I used to run around, and then like, if I had a couple extra bucks, I'd go down there and get comics, and then they moved to the other store and got like a lot of the more international stuff, like the model kits, all the Gundam. And then Mike's Comic Hut was awesome. That's the first place that I would buy tons of back issues from when I was young.
Yeah. They had like a huge, just like a huge selection, and you could just like go through the long boxes. It was awesome. Like Mike's Comic Hut was like, used to go there like almost every day, like after school, like, buy comics and play Street Fighter 2, and
it
was a lot of fun.
So you grew up a comic fan?
Yeah. I grew up, started like when I was really young, just getting them at like the corner store, like 7-Elevens, those kinds of places, and then yeah, and then I just started hanging out at Mike's, and just never really kind of stopped reading them until I had gaps, like like I didn't read that many when I was like in college or stuff like that, but and then kind of got more back into it like as an adult, um, with some of the more like mature titles, like like Vertigo stuff.
Yeah. So now that you are a comic creator, are you current with anything, or do you curate what you buy at this point, or just don't read anything?
No, no, I
Yeah.
read a lot. Like I kind of go back and forth between like I'll be into like DC and Marvel stuff for a while, and then I'll get more back into like indie stuff, and then drift back to DC and Marvel. I don't really like keep up with anything to the point where like I have like a full run of I don't know, X-Men or something like that. But just basically like now it's like if it looks interesting to me, I'll pick it up. It's
Yeah.
kind of where uh, I guess like the germ of the idea. So I just was like, okay, well, we're gonna do underwater. We're gonna, I really like these old time diving suits. So let's try to narrow down a time period. And yeah, things just sort of developed from there. Like just getting the various ideas for like what makes up the series.
Were you a fan of aquatic horror before writing the book?
Yeah, I mean, I love Jaws. That's one of my favorite all time movies. And it's also like it's aquatic horror, but it's also this sort of like I like to compare it a lot to like The Thing or Alien or you know it's kind of like desperate people um, trapped together because there's like nowhere to go. Like an Alien, it was a spaceship. Here
Yeah.
it's a a ship on the ocean. But yeah, no, I dig aquatic horror. Like I think I'm more familiar with it in like movies than like comics, but like stuff like The Abyss and Leviathan is another one that
Oh,
I
for sure.
remember. Yeah,
Yeah.
Deep Star Six. I'm trying to like just naming all the different
Yeah.
aquatic movies I can remember.
Well,
But
the
yeah.
comparison you made with Alien, I agree with 100% because you're not we're 3 issues in right now, and you're not giving away a whole lot.
Mhm.
Now, where do you what's the end game to the series? Like, how many issues are you going?
We're going 5 issues total. So we have two more to go, and I'm actually we're just putting the finishing touches on number 5. So it's pretty fresh in my mind. But basically, like if you were gonna describe the series as like a roller coaster ride, let's say,
Mhm.
first 2 issues were like climbing up the big hill. Issue 3, we're at the very top and can kind of see over,
Right.
and from here on out, it's the plunge. Like things are just gonna get much worse for everyone on that ship.
Yeah, it's
And
gonna.
I think like any kind of questions people have had about like what's the real deal with the siren, or like they're all everything's coming like in issue 4, and then at issue 5 we have even more kind of like surprises in store. So yeah, I think I'm really like happy with like that people have been on board with like kind of like a little bit of a slow build, and like just letting liking the fact that we're not really like uh cranking up the gas to like all the way like in the first, because I think like the type of story we wanted to tell was just one of like kind of like building dread rather than like um just like immediately getting into it. So
Yeah, I mean,
anyone who's been hanging on like waiting for like a little more gore and
Mhm.
action or whatever, it's coming.
I'm a fan of the slow burn
Mhm.
with comics, and plus, like for me as a lifelong fan, I love stories like that. But it also translates very well once you guys have a collected edition out. because that's that's your
Yep.
5 issue story. You have
Hmm.
your roller coaster ride. I'm looking forward to issue 4 and 5 because it does seem like it's gonna get like real wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what are some of your influences, and like what gets you in the appropriate headspace to write a book like Sea of Sorrows?
Um, hmm. I think like, for me, it's like doing a lot of research, but part of it is reading like, horror writers and things that I like, or like horror comics even. But I think like what really kind of gets me in the headspace is really like, um, for these stories anyway, is kind of digging through like history and just sort of like learning about these like periods we're exploring, and thinking about like how that can translate into an interesting story. Like with Sea of Sorrows, we were looking for like a historical setting to kind of go along with the fact that Road of Bones took place in a historical setting. And I was looking mostly like when I was thinking underwater, I was thinking submarines, and I was looking at, well, there's World War II and there's World War One, and I feel like there's been a lot of World War II stuff out there. Not as much World War One stuff. So let's look at World War One. You know, do we want to set it during the war? It's like we could, but it was a little more interesting to me to you know think about um, setting it after the war, and kind of like diving into the, no pun intended, but diving into the idea of like you know PTSD, and the effect that uh, being in a war like that would have on you, especially in early days where these things were like not really well understood or well diagnosed. So I think for me, like kind of having the war there present in everyone's mind, but not actually happening, like not having the story happen in the middle of the war, it was like a really good, like interesting um vein to mine, like so I think like that's just sort of what it is. It's like I just start looking and start reading, and try to get into the headspace of the characters that I'm writing, and that's like what, then it's sort of like a self-sustaining process. Like the more excited I get, the more I write, and there you
which is
go.
which is always a good thing. But
Yeah.
the first issue right off the bat, I feel like exactly what you said was the grab. It was the gotcha for me because the World War II stuff has been done already.
Hmm.
This is set right after World War One, so the weight of that is still there, and I believe it was issue 2 where you had those interactions with the Americans and the German who just got on board, and
That was the start of 3.
that was the
Yeah.
start of 3. Okay, all
Mhm.
right, and then they're telling him, by the way, we're at war, and then it kind of flashes to
Yeah.
the present day. Like that stuff, I feel like is 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 very cool to do. Like you said, World War II stuff has been kind of done to death, and a lot of it has been done to death in comics.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's not to say that any of those stories are bad, and it's not to say
right.
I can tell like a good World War II story. It's just like, yeah, I just felt like wanting to do something that like was a little bit different, and maybe like a
Mhm.
little bit underexplored in our, kind of consciousness.
Right. And plus, it leaves it open. Do you have any future plans for like a sequel to it? Maybe set in a different time period.
Yeah, I think like, I mean, I love working with Alex. Like I would happily work with Alex for the next like, 20, 50 years, whatever, however long we're here, like on new comics. And, so I think like we definitely have some ideas for things. I don't think we would, again, like, I don't think we would do like kind of like a direct sequel. Like, I don't think
Mhm.
you'd see like Sea of Sorrows 2, but you might see like something of something,
Okay. Yeah.
coming out. I think, yeah, like the way we kind of like, I think if if we could, write our own blank check or whatever, like I think what it would ultimately be would be just sort of like a series, like a horror series, like, like almost like, Tales from the Dark Side or American Horror
Cool.
Story or something like that. Like, where we would just keep doing these for as long as they'll let us.
Mm.
Just finding new stories and new inspirations.
Do you have any maybe dream projects that you want to work on with that horror kind of bent to it?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's funny, like when we talk about like dream projects in comics, it's like, there's like there's creator owned stuff that like I want to do,
Mhm.
or like, I guess independent is like the other word for it. And then that's like dreams in a way where, like, it's like they're achievable. It's like, it's more a question of like, where am I going to do it, rather than, like what publisher is going to be interested in it. But, even if I had to go on Kickstarter and publish it myself, like, that's like a very achievable dream. I think in comics, when I think of comics dream projects, it's like, a lot of people ask me on podcasts like, well, which Marvel character would you love to do, or which DC
Yeah, yeah.
character would you love to do? And yeah, I mean, I have my favorites that I'd love to do stuff with. Like, I'd love to do like a Sabretooth story one day. I'd love to do a Ghost Rider story. Um, there's a bunch of characters that like I really, enjoy, that like, that meant something to me, like growing up. Like, I would say like I'd love to do a Hulk story, but Al Ewing pretty much killed it on like the horror Hulk
Oh,
thing.
forget it.
I don't know
Yeah.
if I don't know if I could top Immortal Hulk, but it's like, but yeah, I mean, like as a character, like I love it. I would love the chance to write the Hulk someday. But
Yeah. Again, that is pretty cool. I know like a lot of creators that I've talked to over the last few years, they usually pick. It's like they want to do an obscure character,
mhm.
like you said, like Sabretooth, and then there it's like the big one, so it's like,
Yeah,
which
well,
is cool. I always find that very cool.
it's because it's like, I mean, I think like for one of the realities of the industry that you kind of learn as the more you talk to people and the more you're in it, is it's like, you're not going to like walk in off the street and they're going to be like, yeah, here's Batman.
Right.
I like the cut of your jib, like,
Mhm.
I want you to write Detective Comics. Like, it's not going to happen. So like, kind of like a lot of times, you know a more feasible way in is to like think of like your own take on like a more, obscure character that you love that maybe they're not doing anything with at the moment, or it's just something you kind of like. Yeah, we all want to write like the big guys, but and gals, but it's like you have to kind of work your way up there. So
Yeah, yeah.
you
No,
know
for sure. Uh,
Mhm.
do you miss the convention scene at all? Were you like a con guy, or were you kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, like I always, you know I have kids, so like travel isn't always feasible for me.
how
But
old are they?
I did always go to New York Comic Con every year, and then I had started doing some more, where I would do like maybe like 2 or 3 cons a year, and yeah, like I love them, and I miss them a lot. I miss, you know it's like you kind of make these friendships with like other creators, and there are people that I love being able to hang out with and love to see, and I would only be able to see them like 2 or 3 times a year. And then now it's like, now I don't get to see them at all, and it's a bummer, because you can you can go on Twitter, you can go on Discord, Facebook, whatever. You could even go on like a Zoom chat or something, but it's just not the same. So I'm definitely looking forward to the return of cons at some point in the future, when it's safe for everyone.
Oh, absolutely. How old are your kids?
I have two boys. One is 12, and the other is 6.
Oh, that's awesome. So, like, are they into comics at all, or?
Uh, you know,
Mm.
definitely not as much as me, but like, but they are. You know, my older son, he'll read all my stuff, and he likes he's into like manga and anime a lot.
That's cool.
Um, and he was also into like kind of like the Wimpy Kid and Dogman books and like all that stuff. And the younger one, he's just sort of getting into it, but his reading's a lot more like you know, like a children's book of Superman or a children's book of, you
Right.
know, with Spider-Man in it. And you know, like he loves the characters. Um, but yeah, you know, there's like the house is full of comics, so it's, you know, if they get bored, they're gonna have plenty to read. So
Well, a house full of comics is always a good thing.
yeah.
So going into the future of your career, can you give me some artists that you would love to work with that you think could really nail your writing style?
Hmm. Let's see. Um,
Did I just put you on the spot?
you did, yeah. I mean, like, you know, there's sort of like, yeah. I mean, like, I would love to work with Brian Level. I think, you know, he's a friend of mine, and I just love his style. I think we could do some amazing like horror stuff together. Um, you know, kind of more like pie in the sky or whatever. I would say like, you know, I would love to do something with like, you know, Mike Mignola or like Derek Robertson. You know, those guys are like legends, so it's like probably never going to happen. But you know, it's like, you know, again, it's like uh, it would be awesome if it did. Um,
Yeah, never say never.
yeah, yeah, you never know. Who else? Ryan Stegman. I think he's amazing. Just the stuff he does on like stuff he's been doing on like Venom and Carnage and stuff like that. I think he's got like an amazing sensibility that we could do some great stuff with. Declan Shalvey,
Oh yeah, right
he's
on.
great. Yeah, I mean, there's you know, how much time do you have? Like, I could probably go on all day, but you know,
As much as you need.
yeah, yeah. But I
It's
mean, but that being said, like, you know, like I couldn't ask for better collaborators than I already do have with Alex, Alex Cormack, um, who we do with Roto Bones and CSROs, and then also my friend Joe Mulvey, who I do another book with called Wailing Blade that we do through Comics Tribe, and those two guys are like we just vibe like really well together. Like, and I hope to be working with them both for like a really long time.
it's always good when you find somebody that you click with and that you can make some good stuff with in
Yeah,
tandem with, you know?
yeah. You know, it just makes everything that much easier. It's like, you know, because not every project is like smooth sailing, but I feel like with those guys, it is more often than not. You know, like very few like no fights, number one, but like there's very few times where like, you know, we're scrambling or like, you know, don't are not on the same page. Mm-hmm.
Has your son been hiding behind you the whole time?
No, he just got up here. He's
That's awesome.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe you both can answer this question actually. And this is something new I've pitched to the creators.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite sandwich of all time?
Ooh, that's a good one. Favorite sandwich of all time. There's this place. I don't know if it's still there, but it was in Midtown, and they had it was called Chat and Chew, and they had this sandwich called Thanksgiving on a Bun, and it was like turkey and stuffing and cranberry sauce and mayo, and it was just like, you know, like a giant giant mess, but like delicious. Like I would like, you know, make a special trip like just to get that sandwich.
That is fascinating. So I interviewed Adam Gorham last week, and
Mm-hmm.
he pretty much said the same thing. He found almost like the same sandwich, and he was in England, and it was like a Thanksgiving sandwich. It's
Yeah,
fascinating. Two in a
yeah,
row. It's
it's
very
good stuff.
interesting. All right, man. So where can everybody find you? You know, plug away.
So you can find me online I'm a website at rduek.com. I do my best to keep it updated, but I'm often busy writing. So if you want to kind of like the day-to-day interaction with me, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at rduek. I'm on Facebook at I think it's R Douek author or Rich Douek author. I don't know. If you do a search, you'll find me. I'm way more active on Twitter than I am anywhere else. So, that's probably the best place. But, if you want to ask me questions or get in touch, like, feel free. That's a great place to do it. As far as like projects, you got CSRO's #4. It's going to be out in the beginning of March. That's a really, I think, key issue for the series. I think, people are really gonna. It's one of my. I think it's like it's probably like, I'm probably gonna say the same thing that when 5 comes out, but I think 4 is like my favorite issue of the series. It's just like we just keep kind of like cranking it up and up. So I'm really excited for that to come out. I'm gonna have a story with Alex in the next issue of Razor Blades, which is a horror anthology that's
Oh, cool.
put out by James Tinian IV. The writer of Batman. It's just sort of like a side indie thing he does that he was gracious enough to invite us on. And I think just sort of keep an eye out because I have a couple of other things that are in like early stages, like unannounced that I can't really talk about, but I'm writing comics and don't plan to stop anytime soon.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Listen, I appreciate the time you took out of your day to chat with me. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, thank you, man.
I can't thank Rich enough for coming on. Who'd have thought there'd be 2 guys named Rich who are from Flushing, New York? I'm sure there's more, but hey, why not, right? We spoke to each other. Thanks, Rich, for coming on again. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys can check out his stuff, and I hope you guys come back for the next episode. We're going to have another few cool guests coming in the next couple of weeks, and I hope you smash that like button, kiss that like button, do what you got to do to that like button. If it's too dirty, please don't tell me about it, but you can DM me about it. You can find me on Twitter at BTCRich. You can find this on YouTube at BTCRichX. You can find me on Instagram where I kind of post some figure photos every so often at BTCRichX. Interact with me, talk to me, ask me questions, do what you got to do, and I'll see you next week, babies. Mwah.